What do you think of that?
It's a clap.
His head claps. Do you like it?
Yeah.
How about some of these others? Does he also clap over here? And the Atlanteans all suck.
They do.
What else we got? Who's this one?
Oh.
What does she do?
I don't even know who this is.
That's Ironheart. She didn't do anything.
Who's Ironheart?
Oh, the guns go up and down. She can shoot people who are coming over her head.
It's kind of lame.
Okay, how about this one?
It's like crappy aim.
What's this one do?
Oh.
Anything? Yeah, I don't know.
The moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. I've done a couple of videos lately about the comic industry steering toward niche, but it's not just the comic industry. It's actually all different forms of projects and pop culture and kind of fan area. And I think, at the end of the day, I was using this analogy with a friend, was saying, look, there's this interesting dynamic in movies where would you rather be, Wes Anderson, or would you rather be Steven Spielberg? Now, Steven Spielberg has been more successful, definitely made more money. He has definitely directed some critically acclaimed, very popular movies. But, generally they are made for the mass market, most of his work. I remember years ago talking to somebody about Schindler's List. And Schindler's List, a black and white, quote unquote art house movie, but it was still made for the mass market in the sense that it was made, marketed, produced, so it could be in lots of theaters, and it was. You could make the same argument, by the way, with a guy like Michael Bay. Now, Michael Bay doesn't make the kind of award-winning type films of Steven Spielberg. Lots of filmmakers would cringe at hearing that. But Michael Bay does make commercially successful mass market movies. That's his deal. That's his style. That's what he puts out. Many of these films are quote unquote popcorn movies, meaning, they're a bit like fast food. You eat them and forget them. But all the same, they make lots of money. Box office for Transformers turns out pretty good. A lot of his independence, a lot of the stuff he's done works out great. By contrast, Wes Anderson does, not quote unquote art house movies. He actually does. Now, he's definitely a known name. You could say similar things about David Lynch. Both of them make movies that I certainly enjoy much more. I like Wes Anderson films. I think they're extremely smart, well done, nicely directed, great in a lot of ways. But they're not mass market movies, and they don't make money like mass market movies. Wes Anderson is not bringing in, $1 billion off of a big budget movie. Wes Anderson isn't being asked to direct the next Star Wars movie or the next Marvel movie, although that would be incredible. But I am aware when I say I like a Wes Anderson movie or I like a David Lynch movie that I'm liking something that is not liked by the mainstream, that is not mass market pop culture content. And I'm okay with that. In fact, I think that's perfectly normal. I think you're supposed to have a mix of kind of big budget Hollywood blockbuster type movies and independent art house type stuff. I think a good healthy mix of both is a good thing. But in comics, I think what happens is a lot of people hear that, would you rather be, Michael Bay or, Wes Anderson, David Lynch? And they say, well, if I have to be Wes Anderson. Michael Bay is garbage. He produces garbage movies. I've heard people in comics say this about Steven Spielberg a lot too. It's like, oh, that guy creates stuff of no value. It's like popcorn writing. Okay. Except a lot of the same people complain that they're making, $60 page rates. And, here's the crazy part. Wes Anderson does fine for himself. Again, he's won lots of awards. He's like the best example of somebody who's done independent art house type movies and still made money and still, got critical acclaim and does well. That's why you've heard of him. Unlike the, hundreds or thousands of other filmmakers who have taken a similar style to Wes Anderson and are pretty obscure. David Lynch, I respect to no end. If you're any kind of fan of the show, I've loved his stuff. I've always loved his stuff. But David Lynch, if you compare the David Lynch estate to the Steven Spielberg estate, there's a significant difference. No, it's not all about money. It's just, if you're going to complain about, living in poverty, you do have to look at a few of your choices. And pursuing a path away from the mainstream is one of those. It just is what it is. That's common sense. So when you look at comic books, the thing is, if you want to do kind of, well, we'll put it this way. I made the analogy earlier. Marvel is not banging on the door of Wes Anderson or David Lynch to do, the next Avengers movie. They're not going to cast David Lynch's Avengers, even though, again, that would be incredible. They're not going to do it. And conversely, David Lynch is also not, calling up Kevin Feige going, let me take a crack at Iron Man. These things, both people understand what they like to do and what works. Doesn't work for Marvel. Doesn't work for Star Wars. However, a lot of the people that are entering into comics and are trying to make these things go, are basically saying, I want to be Wes Anderson, I want to be David Lynch, and I also want to write Spider-Man. And it wouldn't be crazy if I turned Spider-Man into a Wes Anderson movie. It turned into that level of kind of independent comic book. Wouldn't that be awesome? Because that's what a true artist does. And I would argue that a true artist understands their medium and understands that, sometimes you are doing, mass market pop culture, and sometimes you're doing indie niche work where you can kind of truly explore your art. But a smart artist, a clever artist, a good artist understands the differences between the two. They don't try and go in and kind of wreck one property in order to install their vision over it. I think if I may be wrong, if you went to talk to David Lynch and you say, why don't you do an Avengers movie? Why don't you do something like that? My suspicion is David Lynch would find that funny, but really would have no interest in those characters. He'd have no interest, in part because he knows his style doesn't work for that. Not so with comics. And by the way, increasingly other parts of pop culture. I'm reading all these articles about, Lizzo and Jack Black appearing in The Mandalorian. And they're like, this is a final straw for fanboys. And the arguments are weirdly disingenuous. Well, not weirdly. It's often disingenuous with many of these people. But it's, they always frame it up the same way. In a movie series that has crazy space aliens and light sword duels and they try and kind of demean it as much as possible. Fanboys are upset that Jack Black would appear in this series. And the answer is, it's not about Jack Black. It's not about Lizzo. It has nothing to do with either of those things. It has to do with kind of the nature of the product. That's what it has to do with. It has to do with the fact that, in these movies, traditionally, they have steered away from very, very recognizable celebrity cameos. I understand everybody knows Harrison Ford now and Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher. When these movies came out, they weren't as well known, and they weren't asked to play kind of, themselves. They were asked to play a character. And so when you throw in a Jack Black, you're steering toward kind of a wink niche, you're steering away from the mass market pop culture product, and you're steering into kind of making, a joke or making a cameo about things. It's not the end of the world, but it's not the property people signed up for. So, people are bending over backwards to make it about race or weight in Lizzo's case. She is morbidly obese, but that is what it is. Or in Jack Black's case, just general fanboy outrage. How dare these people are taking something seriously that for, 30, 40 years, we pushed on them as a serious property. How dare they do this? It is all this mismatch of who's coming on to write the product. And the reality, both for comics, for movies, for all this other stuff, is if you had if people could just come in and fit the project they're being hired for, you'd get better results. But instead, it's making it about them. It's making it about their desire. It's making it about, hey, we've got Spider-Man here, which in the world of comics is as, Michael Bay as it gets. And saying, yeah, but no, yeah, nah, yeah. We're going to actually do, we're going to do David Lynch approach, which doesn't fit the character whatsoever. But, it's by and large this desire to say it's about me. It's not about the project I'm being hired for. That's how I look at a lot of these things. Anyway, it's the consequence of all this, unfortunately, is these big, giant properties become smaller. And that's what you see in movies. That's what you see in TV shows. That's what you see in comics. They're all just they're shrinking. That's the consequence. And why, I've made this argument to people before, and they're like, well, who cares? It's not yours. It's Disney's. Let it shrink. That's fine. But, what if I want to go play in that sandbox someday? What if I just want to consume it as a fan? Should I just, take an easy come, easy go approach to all these things? It might be healthier, but, I don't think, does Disney want me to do that? That's the hypocrisy in all of this. Is, on one hand, they tell you, don't take it so seriously. Just relax. Don't be upset. You're a fan. Just don't worry about it. Why are you worried about it? It's not yours. Yeah, that's all true. And if you follow that to its conclusion, people stop buying your stuff. And then you as a seller have nothing. You just burn through properties. Is that really the return on investment you want? Seems kind of crazy. One of the most exciting parts, and I'll wrap it up here about comics, about movies, about all these things, is that when you're young, when you're in college or, in school, and you're dreaming about the stories you can tell, Superman or Batman or Star Wars, whatever it happens to be, when you're dreaming about that future for yourself, it's an exciting dream. And I like to hold on to that. I like this desire of like, hey, here are these amazing things you get to go work on someday. That's a pretty cool hope. If, we torch all that stuff down in order to go for the lulls, I don't know what's replacing that. I mean, it strikes me that as much as manga is successful and Dogman and stuff like that, are there, I hope Dogman is inspiring kids to want to be comic artists someday and to be that person. I don't know if there's the same kind of path of saying I could write Spider-Man someday to I could write One Piece someday. I hope that inspiration's out there. But there's value in having these big mass market pop culture things for people to go play with. We torch them all down. I mean, in addition to just taking something away from us we're enjoying right now, I think we're taking away, some future work, a future dream. Let me know what you think. Lisso and Jack Black. Part of it also might not have been so bad if they would have, dressed them up. When there's been times in the previous Star Wars films where celebrities, wanted to show up and be part of the movie just to be part of it, because that was how exciting it was to be part of these things. But they would get heavy. They would get into, huge makeup and that you couldn't tell it was them, or they'd be dressed in a stormtrooper outfit. You wouldn't know. Now it looks like Jack Black walked in off the street and they're like, there's a real blue shirt on him. Go. And not quite the same. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.